The guard who stopped sleeping. There's something about a mall after midnight that no architect ever planned for. The food courts go quiet. The music cuts out. The neon signs that buzz all day finally go dark, one by one, like dying stars in a suburban galaxy. And if you've ever been inside one of those places, when the last customer walked out and the last employee locked up, you already know what I'm talking about. You know that feeling. That feeling like you're not alone. My name doesn't matter. What matters is that for just over 3 years, I was the overnight security guard at a mid-sized retail mall in the Pacific Northwest. We're talking about a place with about 65 stores, a food court that smelled like old grease and cinnamon rolls, even at 2 a.m., and a parking lot so vast it could swallow a small neighborhood. I was hired because vandalism had become a genuine problem. Spray paint on storefronts, broken windows, shopping carts launched into parked cars. Management figured a visible presence during overnight hours would put a stop to most of it. For the first few months, they were right. My routine was simple. I'd clock in just after 11 p.m., do a slow patrol of the parking lot in my Ford Explorer, scan the perimeter, check in on the loading dock areas, and spend the rest of my shift rotating between the lot and walking the interior corridors every couple of hours. It was, by any definition, a boring job. Most nights, my biggest challenge was staying awake. I'd blast talk radio to keep my brain engaged, drink terrible gas station coffee out of a thermos, and occasionally roll down my window to chase off teenagers who thought the empty lot was a prime skateboarding venue at midnight. Honestly, I liked it. The solitude suited me. There's a specific kind of peace that comes with being the only person awake in a space built for thousands. Like being a caretaker of something sleeping. Like the whole building was breathing slowly, and I was the only one who could hear it. But somewhere around month 3, the building started breathing differently. It was a Tuesday, or maybe a Wednesday. The nights blurred together back then, when I noticed something during my 1 a.m. interior sweep. I was cutting through the main corridor near the east wing when I saw it. A light on inside one of the stores. Specifically, it was coming from a women's clothing boutique near the center atrium. The kind of place that sold $90 candles and linen blouses that looked like they were designed to wrinkle. Now, normally, a light on would mean one of two things. Someone left it on by accident, or someone was inside who shouldn't be. I hadn't seen anyone enter the mall. I was confident about that. I'd been circling the lot all evening and hadn't noticed any broken entry points, no prop doors, nothing unusual. But I grabbed my flashlight anyway, parked near the east entrance, and went inside to check it out. Here's where it got strange. As I approached the boutique, I expected to hear the sounds you'd associate with a break-in. Shuffling footsteps, the rustle of merchandise being disturbed, maybe something dropped. Instead, there was nothing. Absolute silence. And when I actually got to the store and shone my light through the security gate, the metal roll-down kind that locks from the inside with a key only the shop owner possesses, the gate was fully down, locked tight. The light was on inside a completely sealed store. I stood there for a solid minute trying to work out the logic of it. Could a timer have malfunctioned? Sure. Was there some kind of electrical quirk? Possible. I noted it in my log and moved on, telling myself it was nothing. Then I got back in my Explorer and continued my loop around the lot. 45 minutes later, same story, different store. This time it was a shoe retailer near the north entrance. Light blazing through the security gate. Gate fully secured. No sounds of disturbance. No visible occupant. I checked the exterior doors nearby. Locked. I crouched and looked under the gap at the bottom of the security gate. Nothing. The floor inside was empty and still. I stood up and tugged on the gate out of reflex. Just gave it a hard pull to see if there was any give. It was solid. And then I heard it. A click. It came from behind me. Quiet, like the sound a light switch makes when you flip it off. I spun around and looked back down the corridor in the direction I'd just come from. The Ida boutique, the first store with the mysterious light, was dark. Light was completely off. But in that fraction of a second before I fully registered what I was seeing, I caught something in my peripheral vision. A shape, low and fast, dropping behind the display counter inside the store. Now, I want to be straight with you. I had been awake for going on 40 hours at that point. A family situation had kept me from sleeping my usual daytime hours, and I was running on 3 hours of rest stretched over 2 full days. I know what sleep deprivation does to a human brain. I know it manufactures shadows, turns still clothing racks into crouching figures, makes the ordinary sinister. I told myself that's what was happening. I told myself that until I heard the second click. I turned back to the shoe store. The light was now off inside it too. Gone, just like the other one. And standing in the corridor between the two darkened shops, holding my flashlight and trying very hard to be rational about this, I became aware of a figure in the shoe store. Standing near the back, not moving. I'm not someone who scares easily. You can't be, in this line of work. But I felt something cold move through my chest in that moment that I still don't have a better word for than dread. I cleared my throat. Then I spoke to the figure. Hey, mall's closed. You can walk out with me right now, or I call the police and you walk out with them. Your choice. Nothing. The figure didn't move, didn't respond. Just stood there beside the light switch, and now that I was focusing my flashlight directly on it, I could see it was roughly human-shaped, about the height of an adult, standing completely still. I pressed closer to the gate, got my flashlight beam as direct as I could through the metal slats. The figure was a clothes rack, a tall circular one with a banner display above it. In the low angle of the light, it had cast a shadow on the back wall that looked, and I'll admit this, exactly like a person standing next to a light switch. I almost laughed. Almost. But here's the thing I've never fully been able to explain. The lights. Both lights were off. Both came on within a 45-minute window on a night I was the only person in the building. Both went off again with that same distinctive click sound. I logged it. I didn't sleep well when I got home that morning, and for the next several months the mall gave me nothing. Calm nights, uneventful patrols, the occasional raccoon in the dumpster enclosure, nothing that required a second thought. I almost convinced myself I'd imagined the whole thing. Started to feel like those early months had been a new job jitteriness, my brain manufacturing mystery where there was none. Then I hit my 1-year mark, and everything changed. What was in the bathroom? Winter in the Pacific Northwest doesn't announce itself so much as it seeps in. A slow gray dampening of everything that starts in October and doesn't really lift until April. By mid-January, the mall had that particular cold building smell. Recycled air, industrial cleaner, and something underneath it all that was harder to name. Like the building itself had absorbed years of human presence and was slowly exhaling it. My shifts had expanded slightly. Management, always looking to consolidate costs, had started asking me to do basic maintenance checks in addition to security patrols. Inspect certain pipe areas for cold weather issues, make sure the emergency lighting in the stairwells was functional, that kind of thing. I didn't love the scope creep, but an extra task or two beat staring at the parking lot for 6 hours. It was around 4 a.m. on a Friday when I headed into the men's restroom near the food court to take a break. Standard single car-door bathroom, 6 urinals, 4 stalls, motion-activated sensors on everything, because this particular mall had gone through a green initiative a few years prior. The lights kicked on when I walked through the door, fluorescent panels stuttering to life overhead. I was about to head for the nearest stall when I heard a toilet flush. I froze. The sound came from the far end of the bathroom. Stall 4. Clear, unmistakable. The mechanical groan of a motion-activated toilet doing what motion-activated toilets do, which should have been simple enough. Sensor misfires happen all the time. A draft through the vent system, a vibration in the pipes. Perfectly explainable. Except I checked all. 4 stalls. I pushed every door open. I even got down on one knee and confirmed there were no feet visible under any of the partitions. The bathroom was empty. No one had been in stall 4. No one had been anywhere near it. I told myself of sensor misfire. I told myself, stop being dramatic. I chose a stall, latched the door, pulled out my phone and started watching a video because sometimes the only way to silence a paranoid brain is to give it something stupid to focus on. 3 minutes in, I heard tapping. It came from the stall immediately to my left, a slow, deliberate knocking against the partition wall, like someone using a single knuckle. Tap, 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 evenly spaced, almost like a metronome. I looked down to my left. There were shoes, men's boots, dark brown, worn at the heel. Toes pointing toward me, not toward the door, not in the natural forward-facing position you'd stand in if you were actually using the stall, but rotated, angled deliberately in my direction. Like whoever was wearing them had turned to face the partition between us. My body went through a very specific sequence in the next 2 seconds. Shock, confusion, and then a slow, terrible understanding that something was wrong in a way I couldn't categorize yet. Because those shoes hadn't been there when I checked. I had checked every stool. I'd looked under every partition. I raised my eyes. He was tall, exceptionally tall. Tall enough that he was visible over the top of the stool partition, even while standing at full height on the other side of it. He was looking directly down at me. Not quickly, not with surprise, as if he'd been caught, just looking. Calm, patient, like he'd been waiting. The moment our eyes met, he dropped. Fast, like a marionette with the strings cut. I kicked the stall door open. The stall was empty. Just the 2 boots, placed side by side on the tile floor in the exact position I'd seen them. No human attached. No one crouched on the tank. No one plastered against the wall to stay out of sight. Just the boots, sitting there alone. I didn't write a log entry for this one. I didn't stop to analyze it. I walked, very quickly, not running, because something in me felt that running would make it real. Back to my Explorer. Locked the doors and sat there with the engine running until the sun came up. I told my supervisor I needed the next 3 days off for personal reasons. He didn't ask questions. I think he'd worked this mall long enough to know not to. Rolling into darkness. The next story isn't mine. It belongs to a friend I'll call Danny. Danny and I went to the same community college in Ohio, back when we were both too young to have good judgment about things like personal safety. We were the kind of friends who thought that doing stupid, mildly dangerous things at 2 a.m. on a school night was character building. We were wrong, obviously. But this particular piece of wrongness produced a story that Danny still tells at parties 15 years later. And every time I hear him tell it, I notice he leaves out the part that scared him most. So, I'll tell it correctly. You may have heard of Eastview Mall. Not the one in Rochester, but a smaller, long-shuttered one in Northeast Ohio that urban explorers had been documenting on forums for years. By the time Danny and I decided to check it out. It had been closed for over a decade, the result of the same slow commercial death that killed hundreds of American malls between 2000 and 2020. Anchor stores pulling out, foot traffic drying up, property taxes becoming impossible to justify. By the time we showed up, the building had been sitting empty, long enough to develop its own ecosystem. Birds nesting in the atrium skylight, water damage warping the tile floors, the ghost of a sparrow still legible in faded paint above one of the food court gates. We got there around midnight on a Thursday. No school the next morning. Danny and I had strategically arranged our schedules around this kind of thing. We found an entry point on the east side that previous explorers had clearly used before. A service door held slightly ajar by a brick someone had wedged into the frame. We slipped inside, clicked on our flashlights, and then, because we were idiots, turned them off again for about 30 seconds, just to fully experience the darkness. I want you to understand something about the dark inside an abandoned mall. It's not the same as the dark of a field or a forest or an unlit room in your house. It's a constructed darkness, man-made, contained by walls and ceilings that block every ambient source of light. It presses against your eyes. It has weight and texture. Standing in it, flashlights off, you become aware of just how total it is, in a way that makes your body want to produce adrenaline just to feel like it's doing something useful. We turned the lights back on. We explored the lower level for close to an hour. Old store cavities with nothing inside them but dust and the occasional abandoned fixture. A food court where the chairs were still arranged around the tables as if the last customers had simply gotten up and walked away and never come back. A carousel in the center atrium, its horses frozen mid-gallop, paint cracking, someone's initials carved into the base of the nearest one. Danny photographed everything. I mostly stayed close to him because, despite my best efforts, the place was getting under my skin. We found the escalator to the second floor and climbed it on foot. The power had been off for years, obviously, and started working our way down the upper corridor. That's when we heard the first bang. It came from somewhere ahead of us on the upper level. Not a crash, not an explosion, but a single dense thud. The kind of sound a heavy door makes when it closes against its frame. Or the kind a large person makes when they walk into something they didn't see in the dark. Danny stopped walking immediately. "Security?" I asked. He shook his head slowly. "Maybe," he said, "or another group." Neither of us felt great about either option. We killed our flashlights and shifted left, pressing against the storefronts, and began moving in the opposite direction as quietly as we could manage. We put maybe 100 feet between us and the sound when we heard the second one. Louder, closer, coming from roughly the direction we were moving toward. We stopped again, flashlights still off. In the complete darkness of that upper corridor, with two loud, unidentified sounds now bracketing us from both ends, I became acutely aware of how alone we actually were. No cell signal inside the building. We'd both checked. No one knew exactly where we were. The only exit we knew for certain was the service door on the lower east side, and getting back to it meant passing one of the two directions the sounds had come from. Danny leaned close to my ear. "We go low and slow," he said. "Hug the right wall. Don't turn on lights unless we absolutely have to." I nodded, then remembered he couldn't see me nod. "Okay," I whispered. We started moving. Here is the thing about trying to navigate a pitch-dark space quietly. The more carefully you listen for external sounds, the more your own footsteps seem to amplify. Every small shift of my sneakers on the tile was a thunderclap to my ears. Every time my shoulder brushed a storefront gate, it rang like a struck bell. I was doing everything I could to stay calm and focused. And then Danny's voice came from somewhere slightly ahead of me. just barely audible, just above a breath. "Here, come here." I moved toward it. He said it again, softer. "Here." I reached out in the dark and found what I assumed was his arm, the fabric of a jacket sleeve. I closed my hand around it. "Okay," I whispered. "Where are we?" "Nothing." "Danny, where are we going?" Silence. Something was wrong. I could feel it in the complete absence of his usual energy. Danny always responded, always had a plan, always had something to say. The silence was wrong. The jacket sleeve I was gripping was wrong. The texture of the fabric was wrong. Too smooth, too heavy. Not the canvas anorak I'd watched him zip up before we came in. I turned on my flashlight. The man's face was 6 inches from mine. He was not Danny. He was not part of any group we'd seen. He was a large man wearing a dark knit beanie and a cloth face mask that covered everything below his eyes. And he was already moving, reaching for me, hand closing on the collar of my jacket as his other arm swept around my neck. I didn't think. I dropped my weight and twisted as hard as I could. The arm tightened. I got one elbow free and drove it backward, connected with something, but not enough. He was strong and he knew what he was doing, and I was losing the fight in under 5 seconds. Then a flashlight beam appeared from my right. Danny threw one punch. One. The kind of punch that produces a very specific, hollow sound on contact, and the arm around my neck released. I didn't look back. I didn't verify what had happened. I just ran, and Danny ran. And we hit that escalator and took it 6 stairs at a time and found the service door and burst out into the cold Ohio night air and didn't stop running until we reached Danny's car 3 blocks away. We sat in the car for a long time without saying anything. Danny started the engine and drove. We were 2 miles away before either of us spoke. "You okay?" he said. "Yeah," I said. "You?" He held up his right hand. His knuckles were split. I gave him the only thing I could give him. I shook his hand, held it for a second longer than a normal handshake, and told him he'd saved my life. Because he had. Whatever that man's intentions were in that dark corridor, and I have thought about it many, many times since, they were not good. We never went back. The man looking at the ceiling. This last story is the one that still keeps me from walking into empty stores alone. For about 8 months, I worked the overnight shift at a 24-hour convenience store located inside a mall in South Carolina. The setup was unusual. The mall itself closed at 9:30 p.m. But our store had 2 entrances, one from the interior mall corridor and one from an external side door that allowed customers to come and go even after the mall locked up. The moment the mall closed for the evening, it was my job to roll down the metal security gate separating our store from the corridor. This made us an island, a lit, open, staffed little store surrounded on 3 sides by the locked-down, dimly lit interior of the mall. The mall kept its night lighting on, low-wattage fixtures every 20 feet or so, enough for the security cameras to register, but not enough to make the space feel inhabited, enough to create shadows, enough to make the things in those shadows harder to define clearly. On the quietest nights, standing at my register and looking through the security gate into that hallway, I sometimes felt like I was staffing a fishbowl. I could see out into the dim corridor. Anyone out there could see into our lit store. It was not a comfortable dynamic. For most of the 8 months, nothing happened worth mentioning. I cleaned shelves, restocked refrigerators, ran the register for the handful of customers who came through the exterior entrance in the small hours. A nurse finishing a late shift, a truck driver needing coffee, the occasional college student doing what college students do at 2 a.m., uneventful. The way these shifts are supposed to be. Then there was the night of the gate. It was close to 1 a.m. I was reorganizing the drink coolers when I heard it. A metallic sound, low and rhythmic, coming from the gate that separated us from the mall corridor. Like someone shaking it, not violently, not the frantic rattling of someone trying to break in, just a slow, steady oscillation. Back and forth, back and forth. I came out from behind the cooler display and looked through the store toward the gate. There was a man on the other side. He was gripping the bars with both hands, roughly shoulder-width apart. And he was looking up. Not at me, not at the store. Straight up, at the ceiling of the mall corridor, at the acoustic tile panels and the security camera housings and the recessed nightlights above his head. He was a white man, mid to late 40s by my estimate, wearing a dirty black and white flannel shirt and dark jeans that hung loose on his frame. His lips were moving slightly, but I couldn't hear anything through the gate. I called out to him, "Hey, mall's closed. Can I help you?" He kept looking at the ceiling. I moved closer, not all the way to the gate, but close enough to raise my voice. "Sir, are you all right? Is there something you need?" He didn't respond. He just kept shaking the gate with that same slow, rhythmic motion, lips still moving, eyes still fixed on something above him that I could not see. I want to be honest, I was not prepared for this. The store had protocols for shoplifting, for medical emergencies, for belligerent customers. There was no protocol for a man standing on the other side of a security gate, looking at the ceiling, refusing to acknowledge you. I tried to remember if there was a number I was supposed to call for mall security. I couldn't find it. The intercom system for communicating with the rest of the mall was a panel of buttons near the back office that I had never been trained to use. So I did the only thing I could do. I turned my back and went back to my register, which meant he was now directly in my line of sight. Our shelving units ran perpendicular to the counter, parallel rows that gave a clear sightline from the register to the gate. I could see him perfectly. And for the next several minutes, that's exactly what I was forced to do. Stand behind my register, trying to look busy, while this man stood on the other side of the gate and stared at the ceiling and slowly shook the bars. Then he stopped. He released the gate. He took a single step backward, then another, still looking up, never looking at his feet, moving in a slow reverse motion down the corridor as if being pulled by something I couldn't see. And then he was gone. Around the corner and out of the camera's range. My heart was still hammering. I checked the clock. It had been about 4 minutes, though it felt longer. I forced myself to breathe slowly and went back to work, telling myself he was a homeless man, a troubled man, someone who'd found a way into the mall after hours and was confused or disoriented. I forced myself to stop thinking about it. For about 20 minutes, I managed it. Then I heard the exterior door slide open. The sound of it was completely normal, a pneumatic hiss, the kind it made a dozen times a night when customers entered. I was between shelves at the time, facing away from the door. I finished the count I was doing, tucked the clipboard under my arm, and walked back toward the register. The man was at the end of the last aisle. Not the liquor aisle specifically, the one beside it, the one with the energy drinks and the bottled water. He was standing at the far end of it with his head tilted back, looking up at the top shelf the way people do when they're searching for something specific. He was still wearing the jeans, but the flannel shirt was gone. He had on a plain gray undershirt. He must have come in through the exterior entrance while I was in the back, taken off his outer shirt for reasons I didn't want to think about, found his way to this aisle. I registered all of this in the second or two it took me to get back to the register, confirmed he was a customer, noted his position, looked away to set down my clipboard, and then I looked back up. He was looking at me, not at the shelf, not at any product, directly at me, across the full length of the store, with a smile that I'm still not able to describe accurately. Not a grin, not the polite half-smile of a customer making brief eye contact. A wide, full-face smile that had no warmth in it whatsoever. The kind of expression that your brain processes before your conscious mind catches up, and the thing your brain concludes, on a level below language, below rational thought, is wrong. I think we looked at each other for about 30 seconds. I know that sounds like nothing. 30 seconds is nothing. But standing behind a register at 1 a.m. in an otherwise empty store, staring at a man who had just been shaking your security gate from the mall side and was now inside your store smiling at you with that smile. 30 seconds is an eternity. I found my voice. Barely. "You need to leave," I said. "Right now, or I'm calling the police." He didn't blink. He didn't move. The smile didn't change. I turned and walked to the back room as fast as I could, without actually running, went inside, and locked the door behind me. I tried my manager first. No answer. Tried again. No answer. I sat in that back room with my phone in my hand for what felt like a very long time. And then there was a tap at the back room door. One tap. Quiet. The kind of tap that says, "I know you're in there." I stopped breathing. I sat there for 5 minutes, maybe 6. I counted the seconds in my head to keep from losing my mind entirely. And at some point, the math shifted. The fear of this man stealing everything in the store, and my losing my job crossed some threshold and briefly became more manageable than the fear of what was on the other side of that door. I unlocked it, opened it slowly, looked out. The store was empty. I walked the full floor, checked every aisle, looked at every corner. Nothing. He was gone. The exterior door showed no indication of anyone passing through it recently, but that didn't mean much. The pneumatic hiss was quiet enough that I might have missed it. I went back to the register. My hands were shaking visibly. Here's what I know. The store has cameras. It always has. When my shift ended that morning and I gave my manager a full account of what had happened, she pulled the footage herself. She watched the man at the gate. She watched him come in through the exterior entrance, minus the flannel shirt. She watched him smile at me from the end of the aisle. And she watched him leave, through a door. She watched him turn and walk out through the interior mall entrance, through the security gate that I had locked and confirmed secure at 9:30 p.m. She showed me the timestamp. The footage was clear. He had walked through a secured metal gate without opening it. 1 second, he was on our side of it, smiling at me. The next, he was on the mall side, walking away, looking up at the ceiling. My manager didn't say much after we watched it. She made a report to mall management. Mall management made a report to someone. Nothing ever came of it officially as far as I know. I gave my 2 weeks' notice the following morning. I stayed for another month because I needed the money. I never worked a shift without another employee present. I never stood at that register and looked out through that gate into the dark corridor without feeling it again. That thing I felt the first night. That thing I can only describe as the certainty that something was looking back. I don't work retail anymore. I still don't like malls.